Good morning. I hope everyone had a decent holiday. They can be somewhat tumultuous, so I hope everyone had a decent holiday. We have any announcements to be made? I know we did have Fernley collected, by the time they're done, over 1,000 Christmas shoe boxes. And I saw Chris Duncan already posted that they know that some of them are already heading to Mexico. And so a neat thing, and I'm glad we were involved in it again. Good old church did a good job of representing. Quite a few boxes went out. We had well over 50 here by the time we got them all counted up. So wonderful time, and I hope they go to a good cause, and maybe someone who wasn't going to have much Christmas had a little bit. You got a yo-yo and a Hot Wheel for me and some socks. Yes. Yeah, I don't think I had any GTO Hot Wheels this year. I feel bad. It's like I let him down. He doesn't even know it, but yeah. Anyway, so anything else that needs to be mentioned before we continue on? Any MOPS updates?
It's going good, and we have a leadership meeting on Tuesday, and I will text where, because it's probably at Kim's, but I don't know.
Okay. You can always try to squeeze something in here, too, if you have to. As the Seas Candy fundraiser. One more week. I've sent out the link to anybody who's interested. You buy the Seas Candy, you can have it delivered wherever you want to, and a certain percentage goes to MOPS for their upcoming. That's for those mothers of preschoolers. A special ministry to encourage mothers of preschoolers. Give them a break during a hectic week. Well then, with all being said and done, let us sing praises to the Lord.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Praises rising, eyes are turning to you. We turn to you. Hope is stirring, hearts are yearning for you. We long for you. 'Cause when we see you, we find strength to face a day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. Washed away, Hosanna, Hosanna. You are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. Hear the sound of hearts returning to you. We turn to you. In your kingdom, broken lives are made new. You make us new. 'Cause when we see you, we find strength to face a day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. Washed away, Hosanna, Hosanna. You are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. Hosanna, Hosanna. Come have your way among us. We welcome you here, Lord Jesus. When we see you, we find strength to face a day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away, washed away. Hosanna, Hosanna, you are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. Hosanna, Hosanna, come have your way among us. We welcome you here, Lord Jesus. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. Let's have a seat.
Hosanna. It's the first Sunday of Advent. Advent meaning the coming one, or a coming event. And this is when we begin to anticipate Jesus' birthday. Happy birthday, Jesus. When I was teaching kids, I had kids around 6, 7 years old. And during Advent, we would get ready for Jesus' birthday. And on his birthday, we would have a cake with candles. And we would sing to the Lord, and then we would cut the cake and eat it. And it was a special time with these kids because for them, Jesus was as much a part of their life as grandma, who they didn't get to see all the time, but somebody who always remembered him on their birthday. So as we go into the Advent season, I would ask you to just rest in the Lord. Think about his coming. Think about what he came to do. Think about what he brought to us. And just sing Hosanna to him. Bow your head with me in prayer. Oh, Lord. The anticipation of the coming of Jesus. People who had waited years and years, knowing there was a Messiah coming, not having any idea he would come as a baby, for crying out loud, because they wanted a king, and yet they got a king, King Jesus. I pray, Lord, that as we come into this season, as we anticipate your birthday, as we consider who we are and who we are in you, I pray that you would bless us. Help us, Lord, to put aside the worldly things. Help us to take all of the decorations and pretend we're decorating for your birthday. What a time that'll be, Lord. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
If you're able, please stand with us.
We stand and lift up our hands, for the joy of the Lord is our strength. We bow down and worship him now. How great, how awesome is he. Together we sing. Everyone sing. Holy is the Lord God
only imagine what it will be like when I walk by His side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when Your face is before me. Can only imagine. Yeah. Surrounded by Your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for You, Jesus? Or in awe of You be still? Will I stand in Your presence? To my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes, when I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I will do is forever, forever worship You. Can only imagine. Can only imagine. Surrounded by Your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for You, Jesus? Or in awe of You be still? Will I stand in Your presence? To my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Oh, surrounded by Your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for You, Jesus? Or in awe of You be still? Will I stand in Your presence? To my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Only imagine when that day comes, when I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine. Please have a seat.
Today marks the beginning of Advent. Advent. Mention, and some people understand it, it's been a tradition, they get it. Not everyone does. Advent is a Christian season of preparation for the nativity, the birth of Jesus, of Christ, at Christmas. It is the beginning of the liturgical year in Western Christianity. Now, some churches follow a liturgical calendar. We're talking about churches that may have more robes and candles, that kind of thing. And they follow a prescribed set of events. It says the name was adopted from the Latin Adventus, which means coming or arrival. So when we celebrate Advent, we're celebrating his coming, his arrival, his birth. And there's also an eye towards his return, often in the Advent. And you'll see the four candles, you'll see pictures of the four candles in a ring, you know, and you light each candle at a different time. And then at the end of 4 weeks, one's a little bit and one's a little bit bigger, you know, because you've lit them at different times. We've done it before, may do it again. Personally on that topic, tradition. I think it's important. I think it's cool. And I think if we skip it once and it bothers you too much, your tradition's too important. You know, yes, have your tradition. But you should still be able to have your Christianity whether you get your tradition or not. That's my only point there. I told that a long time ago, a guy told me you couldn't pray without a candle. Well, I don't care if you light a candle when you pray, but if you can't pray without the candle, that candle is a little too important in the God you're trying to pray to. So it comes from the term coming arrival, translated in the Greek parousia. In the New Testament, this term is used for the second coming of Christ. Thus, the season of the Advent calendar anticipates the coming of Christ. And it says here, and this is from like Wikipedia, 3 different perspectives: the physical nativity in Bethlehem, the reception of Christ in the heart of believers, and are you ready for this? And the eschatological second coming. Eschatology, and here the word eschatological, is the word for end things, last times, the end times, you know, last things is what it is, his return. Now, each of the candles represent something. I looked up some online. So very common to have hope, peace, joy, love. However, I also found one that went faith, hope, joy. So they switched the two. Here's one, prophecy, promise, fulfillment, and faith. Each of the candles represents one of those as they go through it. And I think we did one time where the first candle was the prophecies concerning Christ. The second candle, we talked more about the birth. And the third candle was more about the ministry. And the fourth candle was more about the return. You know, we've mixed it up before. Here's one. How about, so the first candle, and you tell me what kind of church this is. First candle is God's people, the candle of hope. Hope is like a shining light in a dark place. The second candle is the Old Testament prophets, the candle of peace. The third candle is John the Baptist, the candle of love. And the fourth candle, the candle of joy, is Mary, mother of Jesus. What kind of church? Oh, you got that one right. Yeah, you did good there. Now, at this point, I could talk more about what the first candle means and light it. We're not doing that today. And there's a reason, and that is I could talk about these things, I could try to explain them to you, and lighting that candle would still be meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. The holiday season could be meaningless. Why? I found this online. Why is depression so common during the holidays? So, yeah, we could talk about the festivities, and you're building up towards the birth of Christ, and you're going to sing some Christmas carols about the mangers and Bethlehems and all that. And if you're overwhelmed by depression and the darkness that accompanies it, the holidays will not even be meaningless. They'll be, you know, distasteful and disdaining and, you know, difficult and drudgery and any other D words you want to throw in there. Why is depression so common is the name of this website from healthline.com. It goes on to explain. There are several reasons why you may develop depression during the holidays. Now, I can think of one quickly. Happened to me this week. Now, I want you to know on my average time where I go out, I often talk to strangers. This isn't a rare event. It's not even an uncommon event. It's actually pretty normal. I will look around and see if there's anybody I know. Because oftentimes there is, be it in town or here. You know, worked around Reno for 30 years. You know, sometimes I run across peeps. You know, around town here. Been around town here. So you know, I look, and I had to make a trip to Costco this week. Was it Monday? Monday. And I was in search of 3 items to help prepare for our Thanksgiving feast. Okay, where we're gonna go. We get there, can't find a place to park for a while. Finally, we find a place to park. We get up towards the front of the store, no shopping carts. I go back out and look around and scan. People already know, and they're hauling their carts from way in the back 40. I mean, It's like, okay, well, I need 3 items. Some sterno, some aluminum pans to insert into the chafing dishes to keep the food warm, and a box of Kleenex. Well, I'm thinking if I put the box down first and then the sternos and maybe the pans, I can, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I get in the store. I go over. I get the Kleenex. As I'm getting the Kleenex, I look down and I see chafing dishes. You know what I'm talking about, a chafing dish for serving food. I go down there and I see the sterno. And then I see the aluminum lids to put on the foil pans. And I can't find a foil pan to save me. And they come in full size and half size. And I was looking for some half ones, but there wasn't even full ones. And I think it's odd because here's all the other pieces of equipment that would go with it. And there aren't any. I think, well, maybe I'll have to try to get some at Walmart. Work our way up to the line. Bob was with me. There's a long line. We're sitting there waiting to get out of the store with my 3 items. One guy actually, you want to set your food over here for a little bit, rest it on my cart? So, restored my faith in humanity. It did. However, and this was, a woman pulled up in that line next to us, and she had some full-size aluminum pans. So I walked over, man, where did you get these? I said, I went all the way back. She goes, no, the lids are in back. If you want these, you have to find them by the potatoes. Well, I see my problem. I didn't look anywhere near the potatoes for these things. Well, now what do? I'm in line. It's a long line. Do I want to leave my spot? I get with Bob. Do I want to pull Bob out of line? My brilliant plan, I give him throw some stuff on the ground. Kick it as you go, I tell him, right? And I take off back to find the potatoes and then find the pans. And I really decided early on, I am not going to sprint. I don't do that anymore. And so, but I am walking at full speed. I am moving. And my favorite is someone comes out of an aisle, curving right and looking left. That's my favorite. That's one of my favorites. But the one that gets me even more is the person who parks on the right side of the aisle, then stands directly opposed to the car on the left side of the aisle to stare at something, hence blocking the entire aisle. Very common. I don't know why people do that. Very common. I'm zigging. I'm zagging. It looks like I'm running some sort of touchdown play. I find the potatoes. I find them. I make it back. We haven't checked out yet. We get and then the line to get out of Costco goes all the way back to the hot dog stand. We're at the Costco in Plum and Harvard. Well, we make it through that, get out of there, get to the parking lot. It's a line to get out of the parking lot. And remember I talked about my normal experience when I go out shopping? It was gone. Right? I wasn't looking for anyone to talk to. I didn't care if I saw it. I just wanted to get out of there. Right? I wanted to get out of Reno. Get me back to my little quiet street, And it was amazing how quick that all changed. It was very quick. And so that was just it happens to me. I'm thinking it happens to other people too. And if enough of that happens, the whole candle and expecting Christ and remembering the aspects of Christianity are blocked out by all the frustration and anxiety and financial difficulties and all these things. So this actually said, there are several reasons why you may develop depression during the holidays. I do not consider everything I read on the internet to be true or even Christian, let alone true. But I ask you as I read through some of these things, first compare it to your experiences. I read through some of them and they made sense to me, but I ask you to compare it to your experiences. And then, depending on how well you know the Bible, is what's being said also a biblical principle? Is it in the Bible? Is it Christian, if you will? So it says here, there are several reasons why you may develop depression during the holidays. Number 1, social isolation is one of the biggest predictors of depression, especially during the holidays. Well, what I went through didn't want me to hang out with more people. It wanted me to avoid people. But of course, if you're getting depressed, avoiding people is going to make you more depressed. Right? And dealing with the way you deal with stress, pressure, anxiety has a lot to do with how well you're going to survive life. Why do I say that? Because life is full of these things. And if you learn properly how to deal with stress and frustration and disappointment and this, that, and lines and things, you'll have a much better chance of making it. You may not be, I'm not saying I'm trained in these things, but I can tell you, even if I didn't believe this last verse, that social isolation is a problem, it became abundantly clear to all of us during the pandemic. We're all locked up in our houses, and people are just going crazy. I noticed when I went around to try to hand out little pamphlets or communion cups or something to church members, they'd start talking to me at the door. I'm the one that usually does most of the talking. Right? They're talking to me at the door. I'm trying to get back to my car to make the next house. They're following me down the driveway, trying to keep our social distancing, of course. And I thought, wow, that person's not usually that chatty. And it happened to the next house, and the next house, and the next house. That isolation was wearing in. I've seen some studies online where they take some scientists and throw them in a cave, by themselves for weeks, just to see what happens. It ain't good for man to be alone. They start sleeping at random times and doing some random things, and before it's over, they look like Tom Hanks coming off an island somewhere, talking to their volleyball or whatever it is. Some people may have small social circles or lack opportunities for socialization. Sure. People who have feelings of disconnectedness often avoid social interactions at the holiday time. So that which could help you avoid and that which can hurt you, you indulge in. Well, I've just summed up every addiction there is by saying that phrase. And mental health can be affected by these things. It says, unfortunately, withdrawing often makes feelings of loneliness and the symptoms of depression worse. Again, don't have a PhD in this stuff, but based on my experience, it makes sense. These individuals may see other people spending time with friends and family and ask themselves, why can't that be me? Or, why is everyone else so much happier than I am? That is depression. Think about these phrases, because if you find yourself saying something like that, let it be a warning. Let it be a flare. You're heading down the wrong path. One of the best ways to deal with social isolation is to reach out to friends or family for support. You can also try talking to a therapist, and this, of course, was from a therapy-type webpage. They can help you figure out where your feelings come from and develop solutions to overcome them. Here's another one from Vale Health Foundation.org. 5 tips for dealing with stress and depression during the holidays. Number 1, acknowledge and accept. Understandably, the holiday season may be stressful and may intensify your depression. I think we can all agree it could happen. If someone close to you has recently died, or you can't be with loved ones, realize that it's normal to feel sadness. Fair enough. Address it. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to mask it. How do people often hide things or try to numb themselves? Is through alcohol and medication or distraction. And of course, you can have a wound or a bruise that's not healing and just ignore it. It doesn't hurt too much. But the longer you ignore it, the bigger problem you're going to have if it's not healing correctly. It's okay to take time to cry or express your feelings. You can't force yourself to be happy just because it's the holiday season. Don't punish yourself for not feeling celebratory. And you'll find here as you read through this material, I went through quite a bit this week, they're actually trying to tell you 2 things. It's okay to have your feelings, and in my own words, and don't let your feelings tank you. Right? It's okay to have these feelings, but don't let them overtake you. Don't let them ruin you. I got 3 verses I'd like to share real quick, and then I'll make a point about them. They're kind of different, but 3 different verses that kind of sum things up. Let's look at John 16:33 for those at home on the screen there. John 16:33. Verse 33, I have told you these things, Jesus is speaking, so that in me you may have peace, right? And then what does he say? In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. So he's telling you these things, and he's hoping that you'll get some sort of peace. But what is he trying to explain to you? The Lord Jesus is telling you, in this world you will have trouble. but I've overcome the world. So the warning is you will have trouble. And the answer, the hope is, take heart, I have overcome the world. Well, Jesus might know more about these things than I do. He is the Messiah, after all. And he says we're going to have trouble. To me, that implies that if I think everything's going to be hunky-dory, I might be setting myself up for a fall. If I think there's not going to be any difficulties, any stress, any frustration, I'm not taking the words to Jesus at heart, and I'm setting myself up for a big, major disappointment followed by depression. There will be trouble. How you deal with that trouble, how you deal with that stress, it's a question at hand. Another verse, Romans 12:15, verse 15. Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. The Apostle Paul writing to the church in Rome. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn. Only a few points I want to make looking at this verse. One, it talks about people in two different positions. One of them are rejoicing, and the other bunch, if you will, mourning. This, to me, tells me that those people are out there. And when you run across them, you should, in kind, sympathize with them. Mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice. I have a habit of making jokes and stuff, and not as fun at funerals when I do that. I've tried to learn to cut it back a little bit. I'm not making that up. You got to learn. It's a learning curve. It's a learning curve. But there's just times you just don't joke as much. You just don't. And there's time to be serious, as difficult as it may be for some. You rejoice. Now, there's also another point that can be made here. If these two groups of people are out there, could you fall into either of those two categories? Yes. Yes. So this verse is telling me I could have trouble. This verse is telling me there's going to be times of rejoicing and times of mourning. We add one more verse to it, and there's many verses I could have pulled from. This is just a sampling. The good Old Testament, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. For those old enough to remember, the birds turn this into a song, turn, turn. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the sun. Now, what does he mean by every activity? I mean, he's talking about sports and picnicking and all sorts of fun activities. It says every activity under heaven, right? Did I say under the sun a minute ago? It's a reoccurring phrase in the book of Ecclesiastes, under the sun. So my brain just skipped into another verse. Forgive me. Verse 2, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. Those are complete contrary things. And there's a time for each of these. Verse 3, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build. That is a wide range of things. I mean, some of those things are going to be much more fun than others. And yet, it's saying this is how life is. So, if we put these together, we know there's going to be trouble. We know there's going to be mourning and rejoicing. We know that all these things are going to happen during our lifetime. Excuse me. If you take these things to heart, add them together, you're going to come up with a plan on what life looks like. This is what life looks like, so this is what I should expect. And if you're expecting these things to happen, and it doesn't say it's going to be in a perfect balance, you could have two of one and one of the other. You might have three in a row. I've had those kind of years. Most people I know who've lived long enough can actually point at a particular year and say, that was a bad year. And it usually involves financial calamity, medical difficulty, and the death of a loved one or two, all taking place in a short amount of time. They call that a bad year. So it doesn't say it's going to be evenly balanced. It says it's going to happen. And there will be rejoicing. And there will be times to build. And there will be times to heal. And there will be all these things. If a person can put these together, you're really set up to start dealing with stress and the difficulties in life because you're expecting them to come. I see some people melt down when something goes wrong. And I try not to point and laugh, because depending on how much they're melting down. But, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I went out to my car and it wouldn't start. I've owned quite a few cars. Most of them done that to me one time or another. Battery's only good for 4 to 5 years. My last one, which I just replaced this week, made a little over 2 years. A little over 2 years. I think I'm still looking into that one. That was a little premature. And they're up to $100 and something a piece. All these things happen. Cars are going to break down. I was in a hurry, though, and I just happened to have a flat tire. Well, you're not going to notice a flat tire till you get to the car, and you're always going to be going somewhere when it happens. Very rarely do you walk by, just happen to look over, oh, I have a flat tire. What's a nice sunny day? I guess I'll change it out right now. Very rare. Very rare. You're going somewhere, you're trying to get somewhere, the kids, the thing, the meeting, this, and that's when the flat tire happens. Well, are there other things on the car that can break? Certainly. And it can happen close together. Now, to me, I've driven old cars for a long time. Completely normal. In fact, I like my old car. You know why? It leaks so much, I know where I stand on all my fluids. Right? Your car don't leak, maybe you don't check it for a while. Then you have a problem. I know to check every fluid on that old car, because they're all leaking to some degree. These are part of life. Oh, I was just trying to do it. I was almost there, and then I had a medical emergency. I look around the room, and those I know well have all had medical emergencies and surgeries. And you call it a procedure when you're younger and just have a little something. But after a while, it's a surgery. You start seeing specialists. All right? And it depends on what part's acting up. There's a specialist for each one. How can you not expect these things to come? Well, if you have a pretty good spree, I can see where you kind of get, things are going pretty good. They always go pretty good. This is just the way things are. If you read some of these things, which I'm encouraging Bible reading, you're reminded of the full scale, the full picture of what can happen in life. And many of you know, during 2018, I had some heart difficulties. And in one day, in 2018, I had my first ambulance ride, my first emergency room visit, my first CAT scan, my first EKG, my first heart catheter, my first open heart surgery, my first quintuple bypass, hopefully my last. All in one day. Talk about life happening, all these things. I can't make this point enough. I'm not saying it's all bad. But you just have to be real with your feelings. Also be real with future and life. Be real with that and watch. You will survive better if you have a realistic expectation. And if you can remember things well, you think, well, I had that bad year, but guess what? I survived. So in theory, should I have another bad year? Hope I don't. Could I survive it? Yes. I couldn't see that during the first one. I could not see, up. I'll even tell you what it was. I was 21 years old, and I was about to have a child, and my mother died. And then, about 8 months later, my father died, 9 months later. And I didn't have anything to compare this to. I'd never had a loved one that close to me die before. Furthermore, I'm actually becoming a parent for the first time in my life, and that's when you start realizing your parents weren't so goofy after all. Wow, they actually had some of this stuff figured out. How do they do this? You start wondering to yourself. And there was no one to ask, no one to call. That affected me. I consider that to be a very difficult, tumultuous year. Because I was just getting over my mother, within those 8-9 months, and then my dad dies. I bring it up sometimes, but it doesn't bother me like it used to. Time has helped. So it's another factor we can include in this road to survival and reading our verses take some time. Take some time. In fact, should I live another 6 years, I will have lived 2/3 of my life without parents. So, chances are you can get over it. You know what I'm saying? Chances are. And there's always the nice ones where the person's lived such a long life and their health is in such a state and their mental condition's in such a state that, you're kind of preparing yourself for the inevitable. But it doesn't always go that way. I was thinking about this the other day. There has been times I've waved howdy to a coworker Friday afternoon and never saw them again. They didn't make it back on Monday. That's also part of life. So you have to think about these things. And I'll tell you, we talk about these things sometimes at church. We don't talk about these things anywhere else. We don't talk about them during the meetings or the social things or at the town meetings. We don't talk about these things during Cub Scout meetings or Little League meetings or your favorite sporting event. And yet they're that integral part of life, but we never talk about it. Then next it says here, make a budget. That's brilliant. The financial stress, make a budget. In fact, there used to be I used to listen to a financial advisor, Larry Burkett, and it could be as simple as you take your money and you put it into a sock. This is your spending money. And when the sock's empty, stop spending. Right? Because what happens? And the cards are getting higher and higher. You just keep trying. Oh, and Joey needs a gift and little so-and-so and so. If there's things you can do. You budget, you plan. You can also try to do other types of gifts. A lovely written letter can be incredibly encouraging. Much more than a newfangled flashy toy with some, lights and buzzers and whatever else. You put your feelings on words and you send it to the person. You can email it. It doesn't even cost you the price of a stamp. And these are things you can do to and you think about it. You put some effort into it. Amazon card I like. Don't get me wrong. You want to send me some? Send me some. But there's not a lot of thought. It's not really, a letter can really there's things you can do that you don't have to spend money on. Spending time with someone is another way of doing it. Very hard to do in the busy, because with 24 hours now, older people in the room understand, younger people won't understand as much. It used to be that in the evening, things just shut down. All sorts of things. There wasn't factories going 24/7. There wasn't, because nobody was out there, stores shut down and gas stations shut down. And I heard I moved to Fernley in 89, but working in Reno around some older people, most of them had a story where they were coming back to Reno, getting low on gas, pulled into Fernley, but it was after 6 o'clock. And you could not get gas in this town back in the 70s or 80s or whatever it was. They rolled up the sidewalks, we call it. You know what I mean? They shut the place down. Well, because of that, and you didn't have 57 channels. Do you know what happens when you hear Louis Armstrong on late night TV or the national anthem? It means the TV channel's going blank. I know this is shocking to some people. There came a point in the late evening, wee hours of the morning, we're ending our broadcasting day, and either it's the national anthem or, It's a Beautiful World by Louis Armstrong or something along those lines starts playing. That's it. TV's done. Well, you're not going to be watching that all night, are you? And it was just a time where you had more time to think, to process, to rest. And then with the more and more distractions and the 24/7s and I think last night, was the last night before, wee hours in the morning, I was ordering something on Amazon. But you couldn't do that. You couldn't order anything. You could drive for a long, long way to try to find something open. Reno was a little better, being more of a nightclub kind of town. You could find a few stores there that were 24. But most places, you couldn't spend the money and you couldn't waste your time. You couldn't be distracted. Now, I do have a quote here, and the reason I brought it up for a couple of reasons. Neither a borrower nor lender be. Neither a borrower nor lender be. What verse of the Bible is that? Close, but not quite. Yeah, no. But you're right. What is she saying? It's not a Bible verse. It's not. And to quote the bard, William Shakespeare, from the play Hamlet, Polonius is talking to Laertes, and he's given him fatherly instruction. He's taken off from Denmark and heading over to France or something. His son is taken off, and Polonius gives him some instruction. And in it, he says, as he's going off to the big city there or whatever, neither a borrow or neither be. And then Shakespeare adds, for the loan oft loses both itself and friend. What's it saying? If you lend money to a friend, you may lose the money and the friend. Right? And then it adds, and borrower dulls the edge of husbandry. which is an old English way of saying. And borrowing things stops you from being, what's the best way of saying it? Prudent, managing your resources. Oh, I ran out, I'll just go borrow some. Well, you're not going to manage your resources as long as you can borrow things. In fact, the husbandry often is used for animal husbandry. I've also used it in farming and stuff like that, husbandry. And it's the managing and maintaining of all the critters, and all the barnyard critters and such. And I mean, what do you have to do to manage those things? There's quite a bit involved. That is animal husbandry. Well, husbandry here in general is all those things you do to take care of business. And it dulls that. It dulls the edge of that. We've already talked about manage your expectations, it says here. That is a reoccurring biblical principle. In fact, how you spend your money. Bless you. It means more coming from me. Okay, it doesn't really. I don't know if I did that right, but it's from the heart. Yeah. Bible has all sorts of verses about how you spend your money. All sorts of verses. It talks about money is a trap. The love of money can be a trap. The love of money can wound a person with many griefs. What does that sound like? In fact, it's funny. It was just this week. I ran across a video that it was just all these different people had won good money and wasted it. The one that amazed me the most, I think it was just for the purposes of this sermon. Last night somewhere, I clicked on a picture. I don't even watch a lot of sports stuff, but Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq was talking, and the guy interviewed him. Signing his first NBA contract, his signing bonus was $1 million. He got a call a week later, and he was $80,000 overdrawn. And it was, in fact, he explained, he went out and got a car, a nice car. I don't know how many years ago this was. He said it cost $150,000. By today's money, a bit more than that. Then his father liked it so much, he bought his dad one. Well, now we're at $300,000. His mom kind of liked the brand, but didn't want a car that big, so he got her a smaller one, $400,000. And what he did the rest of the week, I don't know, but within a week or so, his banker called him and told him he was $80,000 overdrawn. Should you make a budget? Yes. Does everyone make a budget? No. Learn, practice, try again. If you don't succeed, don't give up. Keep trying. And what's that word we talk about? Everyone wants immediate gratification. But if you're willing to work hard, there's gain. If you're willing to work on a budget, there comes a point where you can breathe. The bills aren't hounding on your neck. And if an emergency pops up and you have a little bit in savings, it hates to use it, but you didn't charge. And that could be the next time the car breaks, because we already talked about that. It's going to happen unless you... In fact, I've even seen very new cars broke down on the highway from time to time. So while a new car may increase your chances of not breaking down, not guaranteed. Not guaranteed. So money, manage your expectations. Very clear, the Bible's got all sorts of verses about judging yourself, judging your actions, judging your motives. Here it says, let go of the past and look forward to the future. Don't be disappointed if your holidays are not like they used to be. Changes are part of life. There's a keeper. There's one that people forget. Changes are part of life. We just read that all through those Bible verses. You can cherish fond holiday memories from the past. But you'll only set yourself up for sadness if everything has to be just like the good old days. See, it's saying you don't have to forget the past. You can cherish the past. But don't let that have to be the perfect idea of the good old days for you to enjoy this season. Right there is a very powerful force we call tradition. Or as I like to say, tradition, fiddler on the roof. Right? There is this powerful force of tradition where that's the way we do it, that's the way we keep on doing it. This is fantastic. It's who we are. It's fond memories I have of our family traditions. And it's also the enemy at the same time. Thank goodness they don't stick with tradition in the medical field. What would they be doing to us now? Bring out the leeches and let more blood out? I mean, what would the case be? I think about it in industry. I think about convenience. I'm sure somewhere, more than once, there was some church, we don't need that newfangled electricity. You know, who needs that indoor plumbing? Well, our candles in our outhouse are just fine. They always have been. We could try that today, but it could affect church attendance. You know what I mean? Candles in the outhouse. Tradition. And it's good to have it. It's who you are. So it says, there's several ways. One more here is seek support. There's something I often find myself telling people when difficult times happen. You're not alone. Why do I tell them this? Because it's true. It's also something they can't see, because all the major difficulties in life are so close and so vivid, you can't see anything else. We start off by saying you can't see Advent. You can't see hope. You can't see a way out. All you see is the things directly in front of your vision. Be it mental, emotional, or what have you. So, here's an interesting thought. So let go of your traditions. Here it says, the holidays are usually a busy time, and it may sound like a cliche, but taking the time to do something for someone else can give you a new perspective. Well, doing something for somebody else is clearly a reoccurring biblical theme. I won't even quote any verses, but just mention, look up any verse that says one another or each other. Why? Because it implies both, you and someone else. You having Christianity by yourself does not include a lot of other people. And you could go up to a cabin and just think your happy Christian thoughts, but there's a plethora of verses you're not applying because you don't have that one another, each other active in your Christianity. It says here, it doesn't have to be a huge commitment. Volunteer wrapping presents for the charity fundraiser or serve a meal at the community center will help you and those you're helping. It gets bitter cold here in this neck of the woods. We just had a pretty good cold snap. Now, today might almost hit 50. T-shirt weather, as far as I'm concerned, growing up around here. But not too long ago, the high was 32, and it will happen again. In fact, usually between Christmas and New Year's, we'll drop down around 0 for a week. That's usually when you can't find a plumber the very next week, as things start to thaw. And I was talking to a gentleman who just out of the blue said a praise. He says, I'm thankful I have a warm home when I think of homeless during these cold snaps. Well, it says here, you go to the community center, helping someone else, finding out you're not alone in your difficulties. Here's one about a support system. Right? It says here, support can come from a lot of places. Many people turn to their friends and families, while others find it in community or religious organizations. So, put those together. You're not alone. And other people. Well, the church is perfect for that. Now, what's the problem with church? Well, people. They can be the problem. Not all of them are nice. And what's the most blessed thing about church, which is, besides worshiping the Lord our God, is other people. I can tell you that church is small. People will learn your name pretty quick. Right? It's a fact. Now, you could go to a very large one and kind of become, work your way into the crowd, not try to make eye contact. You could get in and get out without any commitment. But a small church, someone's going to walk up to you because they recognize you're not from around here. You're new to the building or the church. That's going to happen. Then we're going to talk about you're not alone. You might feel that way having lost your parent. People in here have lost their parents. You might feel that way because you've lost a spouse. People in this room right now, and for those at home who can't see the attendance, I'd like to tell you it's standing room only, but it's not. And in a small room with this amount of people, many people qualify for this statement. You are struggling with alcohol or addictions. Same thing. People in this room have been there. They've done it. They're fighting it themselves. You're truly not alone. And so the Bible wants you to fellowship and work your way out. The mental health thing's telling you to do that. I think there is only one person who doesn't want you to believe this. Satan. Satan whispers in your ear, you're alone, no one understands. They don't get it, they don't care. And you'll just hear that message over and over and over again. There's ways around it. And you need to talk about it now. It's much easier for me to explain to you how to get somewhere before you get lost and then try to explain how to get there because you don't even know where you're at, right? Well, that happens when it comes to some of these things. If we talk about these things now, It's your best possible chance, forewarning is foreknowledge, to be forearmed is to be forewarned, type of forewarned, forearmed. There we go. Switch. These are the things. You're not alone. Now, this is back from one of the other websites I call. I'm just going to speed through this real quick. It says, during the holidays, several ways to stave off. Different website. Right? Begin a new tradition. Sounds familiar. Planning a family vacation or something different. Yeah, if you're surrounded by your old home where the tradition used to take place and it's no longer there, you may want to start a new tradition. Go out, take a vacation that time of year, whatever. It could really help. It could save you. It goes on to say, don't give in to holiday pressures. Plan it. In fact, if you can get a lot of your shopping done before Black Friday, you are a very wise person. Oh, there are the sales. Well, do the Amazon thing. You don't have to go to the parking lot to try to find a cart, to try to find a foil, to try to get to the checkout stand, to try to get back to your car, then get out of the parking lot again. Not that I'm scarred. Feel free to leave an event if you're uncomfortable. And again, it's telling you both. You don't have to go to every event. You don't have to feel comfortable at every event. But don't stay home, it's also saying. Don't just dwell in it. Try to get out. Volunteer. We've heard that before. Helping others can also be very helpful to you. It says, for example, you might try working in a soup kitchen, organizing a gift drive. We just went through those Christmas boxes around here. Helping your neighbor with yard work or house tasks. Get back to nature. Some people get out. Right? Going for a walk in the park or the woods may help some people feel relaxed. And you know what's funny is I read this stuff from these medical professionals. Everybody knows this. My mother knew this. You're down. Hey, get up out of bed. Get those curtains open. Get some sunlight in here. You've been sitting around all day. Why don't you get out, get a little air? Mom didn't have a college degree. She knew these things. These things can help. These things can help. Something that helped me greatly is I remember I used to go to deliver the El Dorado when I was still driving truck. I'd get there and there'd be a row of trucks. Well, El Dorado has all sorts of restaurants in it, not just one. You're delivering food, it takes a while. Well, I'd listen to the radio, and every day I got there was this whole series on fighting depression, especially when you're unemployed. Well, at the time I was listening to it, I'd never been unemployed for over 30 years. In fact, the longest I'd been unemployed up until that point in my entire life was 6 days in between two jobs. I did not understand any of this, but I remember listening to it and listening to it and listening to it, and they talked about don't fall into the routines of depression. Get up, wash your face, get moving, get some something, get out. Prepare yourself mentally that you're not going to get the first job you apply for, or the second, or the third, and you may have to try for a while. And that happens to people. It's kind of preparing you mentally. Well, my time came. I was tired of truck driving. I thought, well, I've worked as a truck driver for 25 years. I held on to the same job for 25 years. That ought to be impressive to some warehouse around here. And application after application after application, they'd say, we'll email you. And that's the last I heard. And what came back to mind? Get up, wash your face, get moving, try again. And you know what? I took a job. I held that one for 3.5 years, It works. The Bible, most of these things we've talked about aren't cutting-edge secrets. They're all over the Bible, all over common experience, and all over the internet should you try to survive these things. I'm talking about the holidays. So, we talked about you can light the candles and they mean nothing. But if you can get this stuff squared away, all the noises, all the distractions, all the emotions, all the negativity, you have to plan, you have to prepare. In fact, I often say you almost have to fight for peace. I know that sounds contrary, but sometimes you do. You really have to fight and organize and claw to get some peace, but you can. Then lighting the candle, remembering Christ, is more than meaningful. Let us pray. Gracious Lord, I thank you for this time. I thank you for your word. And I ask as we go about the rest of the season that we find you in everything, not the frustration. That should we be held up, we just smile at a chance to pray, or a chance to be patient, or a chance to start talking to the neighbor next to us in the line that's not moving, a chance to pray for someone. Help us focus on you, the reason for this season, and deal with all the other stuff. In Jesus' name, amen. You are dismissed.